what we're going to do today, I'm going to do a brief introduction. Then we have 75 minutes for our presenters. Then we'll have about 10-15 minutes for questions. So as you have questions, please type them in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring the chat. And I'd like to give a brief introduction to our guests we're very fortunate to have. This is the American Marketing Association's Higher Ed SIG presentation. This is our first research presentation. And we are very fortunate to have two wonderful speakers talking about the latest development and literature reviews. Our first speaker, we have Dr. Satish Kumar. He's published more than 100 bibliometric reviews. He's the Associate Dean at Malaviya. Did I say that right?
Yes, Malaviya.
Malaviya, National Institute of Technology in India. And he is also teaching at Swinburne University of Technology on their Malaysia campus. He has published in such journals as International Journal of Research and Marketing, Journal of Advertising Research, Journal of Consumer Behavior, Journal of Business Research, Journal of Business and Industrial Marketing, Journal of International Marketing, Journal of Service Research, and Psychology and Marketing. Our other guest speaker today is Dr. Wang Mark Lim, who as Dean has recently gotten AACSB accreditation at Sunway University Business School. He's also editor-in-chief of Global Business and Organizational Excellence. He has also published more than 100 manuscripts in journals including European Journal of Marketing, Journal of Advertising Research, Journal of Business Research, Journal of Consumer Behavior, Journal of International Marketing, Industrial Marketing Management, Marketing Theory, and Psychology and Marketing, among others. So we are very, very fortunate with the AMA Higher Ed SIG to have two such experts who have published many systematic bibliometric literature reviews to talk about the latest that's going on in this field that I think would be tremendously helpful to scholars in all different areas. But before I turn it over to them, if I could have everybody briefly turn on your screen, your camera, and so that way I can take a quick picture. Okay, so if we could get everybody's camera. This is the mom and me. We have to get a picture. Okay, so if we could, here we go. And okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. Now I'm going to turn it over to our speakers. And as you have questions again, please type them in the chat and we'll save those for the end.
All right, so thank you very much, Professor Eastman, for that very generous introduction and very kind introduction. And it's great to be here. I think Satish and myself, we are very, very happy to be invited for this AMA's SIG in higher education. I think it's a fantastic initiative of bringing people together. And as we can see today, the crowd here today, it's very diverse. It's from all around the world. So we actually have very, very good representation. And I think we were having a chat before this webinar actually started with Professor Eastman. The wonders of the pandemic. Everybody is now on board with tech, with video conferencing, with Zoom, right? And it's because of that we can actually have this webinar. And it is all around the world, right? People don't have to travel, and with climate change being a top agenda these days, this actually helps a lot in that sense. right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up my screen because we have prepared a slide deck, right? So Satish and myself, we have prepared a slide deck. And what we will do is, both of us, we will come weave in and weave out at different sections of the presentation here today. And if you have any questions, feel free to put in the chat, or we will have some Q&A after this, and you can unmute your mic later on and ask questions. All right. I have all kinds of experiences, publishing in different journals at different stages. So, feel free to ask any questions. There are no stupid questions, right? And you never know that you can actually get some really, really good insights from our experiences, all right? So pick our brain while we are here, okay? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to share my screen. I've got it there, and I'm going to put it into the presentation mode so that you'll be able to see it, all right? So I think you'll be able to see my screen shortly. Okay, so that's us. That's how we look on the professional photograph, but hey, we are on Zoom now, so you can get to see how we actually really look like. So I think we are much not as serious as how you see the photographs, right? So that's me, right? My name is Mark. I'm actually in Sunway Business School, and my colleague here, Satish, is in India in Malaviya National Institute of Technology. And today we're going to introduce to you the world of literature reviews, what's happening in that world, what are some innovations coming out from that, and how do you actually ensure rigor, when you actually do literature reviews. So this is an article that we have published earlier in 2022 about, looking at the what, why, and how to contribute of literature reviews. So in this article, it's pretty comprehensive. It takes you through the different types of literature reviews, both literature reviews as part of your own conceptual and empirical articles, as well as literature reviews as independent studies. All right. And in that article itself, we actually presented this table, right? And I think this table is actually very useful because this table tells us all the different types of scholarly research that can be done. All right. And as you can see on the left, you will notice that literature review is one type of scholarly research, and it's the first type of scholarly research that usually is done, right? Because literature reviews allows you to see the entire field, how it's progressing, and what are some of the ideas that can go moving forward, right? So literature reviews, when it's published as independent studies, that's what it can tell you, right? And literature reviews is very important because you need to do your review and understand literature first before you move on to do other types of research, right? Because if you don't understand the field, what could happen is that you may come out with replicative ideas. Someone has already done it before, and you may not, come up with something that's original or novel, right? Because the fundamentals of doing research is that you are supposed to come up with answers that you don't know too, and that's why you do the research, right? If you already know the answers, or someone has already done the research, and the question is, why are you doing the research again? Unless your objective is trying to prove a replicative point, right? If not, in general, you actually want to come up with new ideas, and that's why it's very important to actually do a literature review, a well-done literature review, all right? So literature review contributes in that manner, right? So once you have literature review, then typically what happens is that you may come out with an idea, all right, conceptual, and there's a lot of thoughts that go in there. So that's where you write a conceptual paper, right? And if you look at, Irina Jakola's paper in terms of the 4 methods to actually come up with conceptual papers, that's very good to follow, because that gives you a very strong methodology to develop conceptual papers, right? So when you look at conceptual papers, in the past, you will always see authors, giving a piece of their mind in terms of different issues and bringing different strands of literature together to come up with a conceptual paper, right? But since Jakola's article came out in AMS Review, you will now see conceptual articles having a methodology section explaining what type of approach for conceptual articles or conceptual development that is being adopted, right? So take a look at that paper. And then after you have conceptual articles, when you actually come up with ideas, then you actually want to see what people think. You want to know, whether this is something that makes sense to them. So typically what is done is you actually do a qualitative research, right? You can do some interviews, you can do some focus group, and then see what people think about those kind of ideas. Right. And once you have a sense in terms of how people feel on the ground, and you refine your model and stuff like that, then you actually want to test it out quantitatively, right? To see whether, those kind of relationships that you're proposing, is it significant or not? Is this generalizable to a certain extent to the population and stuff like that? So that's when you do quantitative research, right? When you use a non-experimental method, like regression and so on, typically you're looking at associations, all right? And if, of course, you look at mediating motoring effect, then you're looking at some to some extent, some form of causality, which is conditional effect over there. All right. But if you really want to actually establish causality, then you got to engage yourself into experimental research where you start, when you're actually controlling for cause and effect kind of variables, kind of thing like that. For example, if a change in price by 10%, right? If you increase price by 10%, how much would that actually affect sales? If you actually reduce by 10%, how much would it actually affect sales? So you actually have something to control, right? And that's where you actually can establish causality, right? To experimental research. So as you can see, when it comes to scholarly research, there are different types of research that can be done. There is no, I think one of the misconceptions or one of the debates that's out there is always about, that for example, qualitative research is not generalizable, right? And it's inferior to quantitative research. I don't think that is the case. That should never be the case, because each type of scholarly research has its own unique contribution that it's trying to bring to the table, right? So they are all, I think when you look at different types of scholarly research, it should be viewed from a collaborative approach rather than a competitive approach or a perspective, right? Meaning that different types of research has its role to play in facilitating the advancement of the body of knowledge, right? So it doesn't mean that one type of research is better than the other. The answer is no. It is about the contribution of each type of research in the progress of advancement to the body of knowledge. Right, so hopefully that actually brings some clarity over there, right? Because reason being is because because the rise of literature review has been very significant, it's an exponential trajectory upwards in recent times, then you see literature reviews being criticized the same way how traditionally qualitative research have been criticized, right? But there are grounds to actually support why literature reviews are important. How do they actually contribute to the body of knowledge? All right. So as mentioned, different types of research have different roles to play in the advancement of knowledge. So what are the type of literature reviews that can be done? All right. So in general, as mentioned early in the start of the webinar, literature reviews, there are two types. All right. One is a literature review that is part of your conceptual empirical study, and in that kind of studies, literature reviews basically support the development of new knowledge. All right. So what do you mean by support? All right. It's because conceptual empirical studies will want to come up with something new. They want to test something new. All right. So based on that, literature review helps them to support the justifications for their conceptual ideas, conceptual models, conceptual frameworks, and to support the hypotheses or the propositions that they want to make. All right. So that's the role of literature reviews in conceptual and empirical articles. But literature reviews as independent studies, they are a little bit different, right? So the goal of independent literature reviews is basically to facilitate the development of new knowledge. And to do that, they do three things. Number one, they provide an overview of the field. Number two, they look at the progress of that field, right? What are the gaps, what are the advancements that have been made over time and stuff like that. And number three, they propose new ideas to advance the field, some ways forward. All right. So from that perspective, literature reviews as independent study are essentially facilitators of the advancement of knowledge. All right. So with that understanding, it's also important to understand what literature reviews are not. Right. So in essence, literature reviews are not the creation of new knowledge. Right. So literature reviews do not create new knowledge. For conceptual empirical studies, literature reviews support the development of new knowledge. As independent studies, they facilitate the development of new knowledge, right? So that is, where we actually pin down the contribution of literature reviews, what it is and what it is not. So as you can see now on the screen, these are certain things that you will need to think about. I think it's not just limited to literature reviews, but also to all research that's out there. Right. One of the things that when we do research at our introduction is really, really important, because you need to sell and demonstrate the motivation of the research, right? And I think in our view, Satish, myself, as well as our co-author, Faizan Ali, in the United States, the way we look at it, in terms of value of research to justify the motivation of the research is to look at this criteria, these elements over here, right? Is the research necessary? Is it important? Is it relevant? Is it urgent? Right. So when you have all these criteria that you actually try to tackle and explain, why is this research necessary? Because without this research, what is happening? What are the costs that is going to be there? What's opportunity cost if we don't actually do it? What is the actual cost if we actually don't do it? Right? So that's necessity. When it comes to importance, for example, by looking at this research, by understanding satisfaction, we will actually contribute to creating brand loyalty, for example. Because when customers are satisfied, then they will actually return to you. So it actually creates brand loyalty. So it's important because customers who are brand loyal, at the end of the day, the cost of acquiring that kind of customers becomes less, right? So there are multiple benefits of it, and that's why it's important, right? Why brand loyalty is important. Other than that, is it relevant, right? I think it's very relevant because in the age of hyper connectivity, for example, people always like to try new things, right? Every day they're seeing new advertisements. So it's important to actually come up with loyalty related strategies. Is it urgent? Answer could be, well, during the pandemic, yes, it's very urgent because a lot of companies are suffering, right? So we got to find all kinds of ways to make sure that customers stay loyal, customers return to them, so that that companies actually survive. Because if companies survive, it means that the economy also survives and thrives, right? Because if companies don't survive, what will happen is that unemployment happens, and then you have the spiral effect, right? So when you actually make all those kind of cases and justify your research in that way, where you have, why is it necessary, why is it important, why is it relevant, why is it urgent, then you actually have a very good case to make. All right. And what you see on screen, the necessity, importance, relevance, and urgency there is really very much about literature reviews itself. But then again, if you really want a strong research, all right, whether it's a literature review or not a literature review, all right, and because we are actually talking about literature reviews today, so if you really want to actually have a well-motivated systematic literature review, right, as an independent study, then look at necessity, importance, relevance, and urgency from two perspectives. One is the topic itself, right, that you're actually trying to review, the domain itself that you're trying to review. And number two, you can also talk about necessity, importance, relevance, and urgency of literature reviews itself, right? So you have two angles to actually tackle that problem, right? And very often when you actually, publish and you submit your manuscripts or literature reviews for publication, you always get a kind of question, it's not, there's no strong motivation, it needs to be stronger and stuff like that, right? And they don't tell you how to actually do it. So it becomes very, very vague, right? So this is one way you can actually do it, all right? So for literature reviews as part of conceptual empirical studies, which is not really our focus for today, right? Our focus is more on independent studies, but I'll just brief you through very, very quickly, all right? So if you're doing literature reviews as part of your conceptual and empirical studies, right? Empirical studies like qualitative and quantitative studies, then this is a three-pronged approach that you can actually look at, right? You can actually have three different sections. The first one is to look at theoretical background, where you explain the theory that you're adopting, what the theory is about, why is it important, what have existing studies found about this theory, and how this theory guides the current study. So this is number one, theoretical background. The second one is conceptual background, right, where you actually introduce and define the key concepts or key constructs in your study. Right? So very often people introduce the concept but never define it, right? And sometimes that creates confusion. So the conceptual background is meant to do that kind of work, right? And the third section there is what we call as the proposition development or hypothesis development, right? So proposition development is usually in qualitative studies. Hypothesis development is usually in quantitative studies, right? But and the focus of that section is really about why you are proposing something or why you are hypothesizing about something. So that's the focus of that section over there. Right. And of course, as we progress over time, a lot of journals are removing the word limit, but some journals still have word limit, have space limitation or page limitations. Then, of course, what could happen is that your conceptual background and your proposition development or hypothesis development can actually be combined. Right. So this is typically a three-pronged approach to look at literature reviews as part of conceptual and empirical studies. Again, these are all in this article here, so you can always download this article to get a closer look at it. Other than that, it's about systematic literature reviews. And as you can see on screen, systematic literature reviews are super popular, all right? If you do a Scopus search on the word systematic literature review or systematic review or literature review, you will find since year 2000, which is the beginning of the new millennium, all right? So now it's about 22 years time period. There are about close or more than 500,000, right? It's about close to 600,000 of literature reviews that have already been published. Right? And of course, these are literature reviews across disciplines. But we look at the business and management discipline in Scopus, where the marketing discipline actually sits in, you will notice that there are about 26,000 plus literature reviews that have been published since year 2000. Right? And if you look at recent years, in 2020, 2021, and 2022, that was some time back. But if you look at 2020 and 2021, you see that about 3,000 over, 4,000 over literature reviews that are being published, right? So meaning that, the journals, especially those that index in Scopus, are welcoming literature reviews, right? So the question is, why are systematic literature reviews so popular, right? And there are different reasons for it. The first one is that when people look at the top journals in the fields, all right, depending on where you are, you know, it's A journals, Q1 journals, and so on, we see that a lot of literature reviews as independent studies are getting published, right? So that's why it's becoming very popular, because when people see something that's being published, people see liked, right? And that's why it becomes very popular, and it gets a lot of people interested. The second one is that there's actually a call and recognition of systematic literature reviews by editors of these premier journals. All right. So if you look at it, you know, on the left, you have Academic Management Review. That is a journal, top journal by AOM that actually just looks and publishes reviews. The one on the right is in marketing, which is GEMS, right? Journal of Academic Marketing Science. In the editorial there, you know, the editors, you know, explicitly say that, you know, they actually have a deliberate initiative to encourage more review paper submissions. Right, so when people actually read the editorials, people see that these journals are there, they get very excited and they start, you know, doing literature reviews. The third one is the impact of systematic literature reviews in these journals. Right, as you can see, those are two different journals in two different disciplines. One is in management, one is in psychology. But the key point that I want to make here is that they are journals dedicated to literature reviews only. And for IJMR, which is International Journal of Management Reviews, if you look at it, you know, they are number 2 out of 153 in the business category in the Web of Science, the Journal Scientific Report, and in management, they are number 3. Right, and they just publish reviews. Right, as you can see, the impact of reviews is very high, and that's why this journal is ranked so highly, you know, by the Web of Science in terms of the impact factor. Right, same case with Psychology Bulletin as well. They are number 3 out of 140 in the multidisciplinary category. Impact factor 17.737. Right, so super high impact factor. Right, and again, the reason for that is because of literature reviews. Right, because literature reviews provide them with conceptual clarity, tells people about the development of the field, and then other new research actually use those reviews to justify why their research is needed and how they're actually positioning against existing contributions. Right. Other than that, there are also special issues dedicated to systematic literature reviews, and because of that, you know, a lot of people actually get into the momentum to actually develop systematic literature reviews, right? Because a lot of people, when they see special issue, hey, you know, they're interested, and so that's why they actually develop new research around special issues, right? And of course, you know, traditionally people do research because they're enthusiastic about it, they have an interest about it, they're passionate about a problem and stuff like that. But in these days, you know, there's also another way of looking at it whereby, you know, special issues actually generate interest. And because special issues, you know, it's not just a 3-month kind of deadline, it's usually a 1-year deadline or more. It gives people time to go and explore things that's, you know, that the special issue actually spark their interest in. Right, so from that perspective, special issues, especially on literature reviews across different domains, are actually, you know, getting people excited about doing literature reviews as independent studies. And of course, the last one here is the success of scholars whose, you know, reputation has been largely based on expertise in publishing reviews. All right. So as you can see on screen, this is someone that I knew a few years ago, Jerry George. Previously was in Singapore Management University. Now he's in Georgetown University in the US. And if you look at his citation, 44,000. And if you look at the papers, his top papers, right, are all literature reviews. Right, so you see the first one, which has 13,000 citations, that was published in 2002 in Academic Management Review on absorptive capacity. Right, there's 13,000 citations. Of course, not all papers will strike the jackpot in in citations, but nevertheless, if you look at the others, for example, national culture and entrepreneurship, you know, capabilities perspective of early internationalization and stuff, business model in practice, international entrepreneurship, all these, you know, are around, not to say around, all these different topics, you know, actually leverage on the review approach to actually get published. Right, so you can see from that perspective, it pays off well, you know, in terms of impact of doing literature reviews. Right, so if anyone says that literature reviews, you know, they are not contributing to knowledge, well, if they're not contributing to knowledge, then why they're actually making such a big impact as citations? Right, so they are actually contributing to knowledge in a different way as compared to the other forms of research. So those are the reasons why systematic literature reviews are super popular these days. All right, now as you can see, if you have Satish, Professor Satish and myself on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter, and so on, you will notice that we have been publishing different guides on systematic literature reviews. And sometimes you may be thinking, how come there are so many different guides on the same topic? Well, I think these reviews, these guides that we have published came about because of the different questions that we receive when we actually deliver webinars, right? Over time. Right. And I think within a short period of time this year alone, I think we easily combined, we actually have more than 50 webinars that and seminars that we actually run relating to the literature reviews. So as we progress along, we get questions and we see some other guides that are out there that are not written by us that create some kind of confusion. So sometimes we just got to set the tone straight and to address some of the concerns and some of the issues. And that's why we actually come up with new guides, right? And the way to look at this is this, if you look at structured education modeling, right? The gurus, Joe Hare, Christian Ringel, Marcus Ostertag, you will notice that they also have a lot of guides on different aspects of structured education modeling, all right? So from that perspective, it is always the case when there are new questions, then it prompts the scholars in the field to come up with new guides to address some of those concerns that they're actually facing, right? Because when you actually get a lot of questions, it means that there are some things that needs to be clarified, and that's why you actually write to actually try to clarify it, right? So from this case here, we actually have three different types of guides here. The first one is what we call as a review primer, all right? It doesn't tell you about nomenclature. Nomenclature is like names, right? It doesn't say about bibliometric reviews, thematic reviews, and stuff like that. No, it tells you about what are the different focuses of reviews, what are the different methods to do a review, right? So it breaks it down to the basics, right? So no nomenclatures for this review primer. And once you know the basics, then you move on to the second guide that actually looks at, what are the procedures, what are the steps, what are the protocols in doing literature reviews, right? So the second guide actually tells you that, and that's par for SR. And the third one then gives you an insight in terms of the traditions for review nomenclatures. For example, if you say about bibliometric review, right, what are the conventions for bibliometric review? If it's a framework-based review, what are the conventions in there? Right, what are the traditional practices in there? Right, because if we are following a particular tradition, then of course there are certain things that we need to take note of. Right. So these are the three different types of guides for literature reviews, each of them having its own purpose. Right? And this is what I'm talking about. All right. So in our review primer, which is the ones that's giving you the foundational understanding of systematic literature reviews, these are the two big takeaways that you will actually take away from focus. Right. So focus means that what kind of reviews can you do? All right. What can you review about? Right? So that's focus. And there are essentially 4 different types of focuses. The first one is domain focus, right? You actually review a particular domain. And what do we mean by domain? Well, domain can come in many forms, right? It can be constructs, it can be context, it can be discipline, it can be field, it can be outlet, right? So construct is, for example, customer engagement, right? So you can do a review on customer engagement. You can also do a review, in a context. For example, you do a review in hospitality or tourism. That's a context. You can also do a review in a particular region, right? Like, for example, you want to do a review on India, right? What are the different types of research that's coming out from India? You can also do that as well. You can also do a review in discipline, right? For example, disciplines are like marketing, management, finance, and so on. You can even go down a little bit more specific to a field, right? For example, in management, there is strategic management. In marketing, you have consumer behavior, right? You have IMC and so on. You can also do a review on outlet. For example, you review the Journal of Business Research, like what Professor Satish did. Or you can actually review other types of journals as well, or other types of outlets, right? But when it comes to outlets, you got to be a bit more careful because you don't do the review and then only submit for peer review. You actually, need to send an email to the editor to see whether they're actually interested to publish a review in that area. Or if they already publish a review in the area, if you do a Google Scholar search, then maybe it's not a good idea to do that. Or if you actually approach the editor before actually doing it, then you actually can know whether the editor has already something in the pipeline along that line for a review of their journals. All right. And if there is, then there is no point for you to do it. All right. So having the email is actually very, very important. Right. So that's the first one, domain focused reviews. It can be called construct, context, discipline, field, or outlet. The second one is method focused reviews, all right? Meaning that you actually do a review on a particular method. right? So what are the different types of methods, all right? You have structured dictation modeling, that's one. You have ZMAT, right? Resultant Metaphor Elicitation Technique, that's a qualitative one. Or a very, very trendy one, which is FSQCA, right? Fuzzy Set Qualitative Comparative Analysis. So you can actually do a review on that, okay, in terms of methods. You can also do a review on theories. For example, you want to know what has been done for theory of planned behavior. How have people actually used it, right? So you can also do a review on theory of planned behavior. And the last one there is hybrid focus. Hybrid, as the name says, that you actually combine the different types of focuses over there. For example, you can look at method plus domain, right? You can actually look at how has research been, what type of research has been done using structured dictation modeling in tourism, right? So there's a hybrid of method focus as well as domain focus, particularly in terms of field, right? So that's hybrid. Or you can do, for example, what has marketing research, what kind of marketing research has been done in, let's say, in developing countries in Asia, right? So you only have a few over there. Or you want to concentrate, for example, in a particular country, for example, India, that's okay as well, right? But one thing you got to be careful is that when you actually come out with very specific regions or countries, then it actually narrows your pool of journals that you can actually submit to, right? Because when you look at journals, they're all most of them are international journals, meaning that you're going to speak to an international audience, right? Of course, you can do a country, for example, like India, but if you want to extrapolate, for example, that you make the case, for example, India is one of the largest countries in the world. It's in the billion, multi-billion population, for example, and there's a scaffolding effect, and there's a lot of diaspora that's going on. So that's why it's important to actually, focus on the Indian context as well. So you can actually make this case if you want, but you're going to make a very, very strong one, right? So that's in terms of focus. So once you know your focus in terms of what you actually want to review, then the next question is that you're going to find out how you want to review it. All right, what are the methods you're going to use to actually review, right? So there are different types of methods that are out there, right? So the first one that I think Professor Satish and myself, we really like is bibliometric analysis, right? And why we actually like it is very, very simple. It's because bibliometric analysis leverages on technology. It uses a software to help you do your reviews, right? And of course, it doesn't do everything, but it does quite a lot of the job, right? For example, if you want to review 1,000 papers, can you review 1,000 papers? It will take you a super long time to do that, right? But bibliometric analysis can help you to review 1,000 papers and point you specifically in terms of what are the different, clusters in the field, and what are the top articles of the clusters in the field, and you can go and read them and see what is actually the theme that is characterizing each of those clusters, right? So it gives you a very, very organized way to do that. And to look at it, in another perspective, is that it's the same way as how you do qualitative research, right? When you have done all your coding and stuff, and when you look at coming up with themes, it's very easy for you to do that once you actually have all the coding. So same case as well, bibliometric analysis does something along those lines, but in a more automated way, right? So that's bibliometric analysis, and we will have a look at that in a bit, right? A little bit closer. The second one is content analysis. So content analysis is pretty much, like your qualitative analysis. So whatever you do for qualitative research, you can also do it for reviews as well. For example, you do a content analysis specifically using a thematic analysis. You can also do that in review studies. Or if you want to use a framework to actually guide your analysis to code certain content, you can also do that as well, right? So there's different type of framework that we will see after this. The third one is critical analysis, right? That you're actually critically, analyzing it, and it can be from a thematic perspective as well. So we have a look at that after this. There's also meta-analysis. So meta-analysis whereby you actually test the relationships that have been examined in prior studies. You bring all the statistical information together and you test it on a regression and stuff like that. So you can also do that as well if you wish to. Or the last one there is hybrid, right? Meaning you just combine two or more of these methods that you see to actually review a particular focus area, right? You can actually combine, for example, bibliometric analysis with a content analysis, or you can even do content analysis with a meta-analysis, for example, right? So those are the different methods that you can actually use to review the literature. All right. Again, more information you can get from the article, as you can see on screen over there. All right, that's in the Review of Managerial Science. It's recently published, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, it's fresh. If you go to the journal, you can actually see it in the top list of the articles that was recently published. So this is an example of thematic reviews. So this is in the European Journal of Marketing. This is on selfie. So this is one of the early reviews that I did back in 2016. As you can see, this paper here talks about the different themes in selfie research, right? So as you can see, selfie as a marketing tool, what are the current insights and what are the future research directions? And then you have another theme over there, which is selfie and ethics, what are the current insights and future research directions. So this is one way of presenting it. And this is through a thematic review. This is what we call as a framework-based review, all right? It uses content analysis, but the content analysis of literature in the field is guided by framework. All right, and in this case here, as you see on the screen, there are two types of frameworks that have been adopted and integrated. Here, one of them is the ADO framework. So ADO is antecedents, decisions, outcomes. So that's what we call it. All right, as you can see, the antecedents, decision, outcomes, there are different boxes within there as well. So it doesn't mean that we just look at all the antecedents and we list all the antecedents like that. No, we actually come up with categories for those antecedents. Right, and the way of looking at it is very, very simple. Right, when you review the literature, when you quote, you will be seeing things, for example, apple, orange, cucumber, broccoli, chicken, pork, and so on. Right, so you have all those quotes, and once you have all those quotes, you'll be thinking, is there categories that you can actually use to arrange these quotes? Right, then you can say yes, there are. Right, yes, there's fruits, there's vegetables, and there's poultry. Right, and that's what you actually see on screen. All right, in the antecedents section, it may be a little bit small, but you can actually look this up, the home sharing in Journal of Business Research paper, and this is there. So in under home sharing, the antecedents could be guest related, can be platform related, can be host related, can be property related, and so on. All right, in terms of antecedents. Right, so that's how you actually go about doing it. Right, so that's the ADO framework, looking at antecedents, decisions, and outcomes. And then we have another framework there, which looks at theories, contexts, and methods, right? What are the different theories, what are the contexts, what are the different methods, and we actually code all those things, right? And when we put this together, then it becomes an integrated framework that looks at ADO and TCM, right? So this is one example. And this is the one that I really like, which is bibliometric analysis. And what you see on screen are two guides in the Journal of Business Research. And I think the time would now be appropriate for me to invite the real expert in this area and the one that actually got me interested to do bibliometric research, Professor Satish Kumar. Right, so Satish, maybe you want to unmute your microphone and give us the real insights. Let us hear from the expert, the real expert, the number one in business in this area. Right, so over to you, Satish.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for setting the stone of the different type of literature review. Thank you, AMA Higher Ed, special interest group for having us for this webinar on different type of innovative way of literature review. So as Mark is explaining, variety of innovative review. In the same realm, you have something called bibliometric review, which is basically analyzing the performance of the authors, countries, those who have published, and also which is second part of it is, science mapping, which is more interested as a scholar, PhD, or a faculty colleague who is really interested to do a literature review using, as Mark has mentioned a few minutes back, using technology. So it's a technology-based method of doing review. And the reason is very clear why bibliometric review has started becoming popular. As Mark was telling, imagine you're searching a word, corporate governance, that is my area of research. You will be amazed to know if I search this, on a Scopus, it will give me 23,000 hits. So let us say I'm a fresh scholar, new scholar, wanted to do my research on, corporate governance as an area or domain. Okay, so in that case, my first question or worry will be that what has been already done on that particular area. So I want to do a particularly independent literature review on that particular topic. Systematic literature review, which is narrative in nature, maybe will not help me. Okay, so thematic analysis doing by manual coding, by using a framework which Mark has just explained, TCM, or ADO will not work for me with such a huge number. It is humanly impossible for anyone to review 23,000 articles on a particular topic. So what is the solution? Solution is, rather than analyzing the whole article, can I get some information from the title of a paper, abstract of the paper, and the keyword of the paper. And as Alan Pichard, 1969, when first time introduced, bibliometric, he explained that, it's analysis of, bibliographic information of a paper actually. So what are bibliographic information? On your screen, you have two papers. So you have a title called How to Conduct a Bibliometric Analysis. This is what is bibliographic information. Author's eye is another bibliographic information. Abstract, major bibliographic information. So we know that, all of us know that, what is the importance of writing an abstract. Abstract is the major summary of work you have done. Okay, so if I analyze that text, which is there in the abstract, I can get sense of what is the main themes, topic being discussed in a particular paper. And from there, the origin of, bibliometric started. It was Juppie Carter, a paper by Juppie Carter in 2015 in Organization Research Method Journal, where they started talking about application of this method, bibliometric method, in management as a field, And then, in 2017-18, I got interested in this area. Like, what if there are plenty of papers in a particular area? So if my scholar is having, let's say, 500 paper on a particular area, let's say financial literacy, consumer engagement, or maybe, let's say I want to work on business ethics, on a particular aspect of it. So it's very difficult for me to review that manually. So the technique is I need to look for something called computer assisted, literature review, CALR, we popularly called it. And bibliometric fall into that particular range. So when I started working on this area, and along with my co-author Naveen and others, leading scholars in the marketing and other domain, we started coming up, encountering a very basic problem that there is no guideline available to us. And these two guidelines which are up there on screen has been result of those experiences which we have done, over the year. Working on, let's say 60, 70 odd pieces in bibliometric and publishing in top tier journal, including Financial Times, FT50, like CAR and Rust, we have recently published. Mark, can you switch on, go to the next slide, please? Yeah. If you talk about bibliometric review, it has two categories. One is called performance analysis and another is called science mapping. Okay, so where you are analyzing the publication matrices, like who are the top author, top institutions, top countries which are publishing on a topic, you can get some sense out of that. So that is not the major focus of, which people generally misunderstood bibliometric as. They understand that bibliometric is all about finding out top 25 author, top 25 articles and reporting that in a paper, and that's what they are looking in a paper. And then you face rejection sometimes, desk rejection. And also what is more hidden when you do a more deeper analysis by using second type of analysis, which is based on sometimes citation. Now, we all understand that citations tells us the impact of a particular piece of, let's say knowledge discovery. Let us say Mark was explaining that, that gentleman got, a paper, review paper, which are cited over 13,000 times. So what you can do is by doing citation analysis, you can get some major information and you can get something called clusters, where you can get information about what are the major clusters. We all know that clusters are, grouping of the different concept or different paper, articles published in a particular journal or journals, and combining them to a common theme. So you use certain techniques called, science mapping, which comes under the, domain of, citation analysis, where you do keyword analysis also, co-citation analysis, and thing called bibliographic coupling also. Then third one is, which is hybrid of, first and second, which we call is that you present some, performance analysis part, and then you also talk about something called science mapping. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So people oftenly talk about, and there was a question also, which I was looking at the chat box also. Can really bibliometric contribute to the theory and practice? And our second guideline paper, which was published in 2022, this year only, where we try to find out what are the 10 different contributions of a bibliometric paper, 5 of which were from the theoretical concept theoretical contribution point of view, and 5 of equally work from practical contribution point of view. Those who are more interested in detail can go through these 2 papers, which are open access paper, freely available for download. And I will also put the link in the chat box, later when Mark will switch over to the presentation. Can we go to the next one, please? Yeah, so, this is one example where you can see actually, which Mark was telling, we did a paper on past, present, and future of customer engagement. So where we did a bibliometric analysis. In fact, it was a hybrid review, which Mark has just talked, where we use bibliometric plus narrative, thematic analysis, systematic review. Okay, so as you can see on screen, some output of, some of the analysis from bibliometric. Since this is not a dedicated webinar on bibliometric, I'm just touching upon, major things which we can get out of, bibliometric analysis. Though we are happy to take a separate webinar or maybe series of webinar on, bibliometric also. So you can see first analysis, which is there left-hand side of, is that co-citation analysis, which tells you about past. Okay, so citation, who is citing whom actually, which you are using as a tool. So you can see some different color coding where network is created. Now this color coding is nothing, but these are clusters. And when you will analyze them carefully, you will find that all similar concept, let's say the greener one is talking about customer engagement or consumer engagement and financial performance, let's say, of a firm. So that could be one category of, cluster. Second, which is red here, could be related to determinants of consumer engagement. What are the different determinants of consumer engagement? Bluer one, which you see only few articles are there, that is area where less work has been done. So that is about past. If you look at the second analysis, which is something called keyword co-occurrence analysis. So there are 2 types of analysis which you can do with the help of keyword. Let me first quickly explain what is keyword. Yeah, so keyword are the central theme of a particular paper. So you write 5 or 6 keyword in a paper. They are actually the major thing which you have done in that particular paper. Assumingly, I'm writing a bibliometric paper. So certainly my first keyword will be on bibliometric. And let us say it is on a topic called consumer engagement. So consumer engagement will be my second keyword. If I'm talking about some method, let's say regression, so that will be my, so major things are covered in keywords. So what you do, instead of analyzing the whole paper, you take up all the keywords of a paper and just analyze them, and you use a technique called keyword co-occurrence analysis. Now, co-occurrence means that, let us say Mark is writing a paper and I am also writing a paper, and let's say there is a third author, Reena. She's also writing a paper. We all are using same keyword, let us say consumer engagement. So we all are like co-citation. Okay, so co-occurrence is happening of a single keyword. So any word which is appearing 2 or more times is called co-occurrence analysis. So anything which is occurring 2 or more times. So by analyzing the keyword of a paper, let us say assumingly I have 23,000 paper. And let us say on an average, I have 5 keywords in each of the papers. So I have over 100,000 keywords to analyze. 100,000 keywords can give me what is the present knowledge about which people are publishing on a particular topic, let us say on corporate governance or consumer engagement, as example you can see. So obviously the corpus which was analyzed here was on consumer engagement. That's why you can see in the center you have something called consumer engagement, and then it is getting connected with some other keywords like social media, consumer engagement over social media, consumer engagement and customer satisfaction, as you can see, customer engagement and let's say consumer behavior. You can see different overlapping of, keywords are happening, but these are co-occurrence. So it tells you something about agent of it. And then what you can do is, if you can see down, you can use some computer assisted qualitative data analysis, which helps you, like NVivo is one software which we do for open coding, which tells you that what are the major themes on a particular paper. So if you will read this paper of customer engagement, which is published by us, in JBR, you will see we have identified that what are the future area of research on customer engagement. So we found artificial intelligence is one area, virtual reality is another area, augmented reality and customer engagement is few other area. So that's how you can identify, this. So there is plenty of free software available. Good thing is about that, in most of the cases when you do quantitative analysis, you have plenty of, paid software like SPSS, PLS, SCM and all. But beauty for this particular, analysis literature review is that you have variety of plenty of free software available. Was Viewer, Bibliometrics R package, which is an open source software, is two of them. Then Gaphy is there. Then plenty of them are there, like SiteSpace is there, which is partly, paid and partly free. So Gaphy is there, you can use all of them for the purpose of doing analysis. It's very excellent tool, and a lot of journals are accepting, provided you are meeting the quality requirement. One thing which we are, as an associate editor of few journals, Mark and me, and when I talk to editor-in-chief, is that people generally try to overkill their paper by presenting first part of, a bibliometric, which is performance analysis. They do not dive more into what is called science mapping, which gives you more interesting insights, and in fact, equal to, if not same, actually, the same type of insight which you can get when you do something called, when you do a narrative analysis by manual. One very important reason of popularity why bibliometric has become popular is because it is very objective in nature. And we are living in a world where we are looking for evidence-based research. So this method is, transparent, systematic, reproducible. Everything is, there. I'll come back again when I will again demonstrate you that how we can start, digging the literature, when Mark will be explaining you the process of doing systematic literature review, and when he will be introducing protocol for doing a, a framework for doing a, literature review. Then I will pitch in again and talk about more about that. How do you start about when you do bibliometric analysis? So I think back to you, Mark, for further discussion.
All right, thank you very much, Satish. So, like what Satish has said, I think bibliometric reviews is it's trending, of course. All right, lots of bibliometric reviews are getting published, but also there are a lot of bibliometric reviews that are getting rejected. I think Satish and myself, because we are AEs for JBR, we receive a lot of bibliometric reviews as well. But unfortunately, some of them we have to reject. Reason being is for what Professor Satish has actually mentioned. And stuff like that. Are the implications of it? For example, if you say which are the top countries, right? Okay. So what? What's the implication, right? Is there a social dominance that is there? Is there a gap that you can see, right? Like for example, yes, there may be some in, let's say, in Asia, but you will notice that in Asia is just in the big populations like in China, in Japan, in South Korea. What about areas like in Southeast Asia, right? So when there is some gaps over there, then there's an implication that you can actually mention. So same case as well, it's important to actually show those kind of things. So even if you have top authors, for example, yes, it's nice to actually acknowledge the top authors, but if the top authors have been there and they have not been producing in the field for, let's say in the last 3 to 5 years, then it's actually concerning the field, meaning that new emerging scholars are needed in that field, because if not, then the field will actually die down in the future because these scholars, perhaps are retiring and stuff like that. So from that perspective, your performance analysis needs to actually demonstrate the implications in order for it to work. All right. And then the next part is your science mapping, right? And science mapping is a beautiful thing, all right, because there are different stories you can write. So as you can see on screen, this is the past, present, and future story. Right? So as you see co-citation, you will notice in red, you will suddenly see, Fornell and Lecker over there, and you'll be thinking that, hey, isn't this paper on customer engagement? Why is Fornell and Lecker there? Because Fornell and Lecker is looking at structural modeling, right? It's looking at the discriminant and convergent validity kind of criteria, right, that we always use. So why is it there? Very simple, because co-citation analysis looks at the articles that are being cited in the field. Meaning, if let's say 2 customer engagement articles cite the same article, then that article gets into the cluster here. So from that perspective, it tells you the past, it tells you the knowledge foundation that is informing the field, right? What are the themes that actually informs the field? What is the knowledge foundation in there, right? What is the past knowledge that's actually been relied upon? Whereas keyword co-occurrence is different, right? It tells you what is present in the field, right? What are the current knowledge that are being produced? Right, and of course, the end vivo that we actually use is where we put all the future research directions in there, and we do the coding, quantitative coding and stuff, and look at the different themes that actually come out from there. Right, so this is one way to look at it, where you look at analysis from past, present, and future. The other way you can actually look at it, which is in the next slide, is in this paper that we look at religion in entrepreneurship and business. And in this paper, we did two different types of science mapping technique. One is a key word co-occurrence analysis that you have seen, and the other one is a page rank analysis, which is an alternative to bibliographic coupling. Right? So essentially, these two analyses are different science mapping techniques. Keyword co-occurrence analysis looks at keywords as a source of data. Bibliographic coupling looks at, for example, references as a source of data, and two articles that have the same references, these two articles will form a particular cluster. And same case with PageRank, it looks at articles that are being cited by other highly cited articles will form a cluster, right? So as you can see, bibliographic data are different types. It can be keywords, it can be references, it can be citations, and so on, all right? And they give you different types of way of clustering. But the beauty in this is that it allows you to do triangulation. Triangulation means, for example, if you run one analysis based on keywords and you run one analysis based on, let's say, PageRank as well as bibliographic coupling, they will give you clusters. And the beauty of it is that the clusters will be around the same theme. All right? When different analyses using different source of bibliographic data give you the same number of clusters, give you the same types of themes, what that tells you is that you are very sure that in that field, these are the major themes of research. That's triangulation. In your quantitative studies, it is called reliability. All right. In your qualitative study, it is called your dependability, your replicability. Right. So in bibliometric analysis, in bibliometric reviews, this can also be done, right? So this is the advantage of bibliometric method as compared to other types of methods out there, right? So that's that. Other than that, you have other types of review as well, meta-analytical reviews. So the difference between meta-analysis and meta-analytical reviews is that meta-analytical reviews will review the literature first to find out what are the different factors, different relationships that are there, and then only the model is being developed and is being tested using a meta-analysis. Right? For a usual meta-analysis, you already know the framework. For example, you take the framework of theory of planned behavior and you test it out just like that. Right? You already know the framework over there. But if you don't know the framework yet and you want to source for all those constructs, then it's what we call as a meta-analytical review, because you need to review the literature first before you actually go and conduct the meta-analysis. Right? So that's meta-analytical review. And of course, there is a new one that we introduced here, which is what we call as the meta-systematic review. Right? So meta-systematic review is different as compared to meta-analytical review, right? Meta-analytical review looks at meta-analysis. Meta-systematic review essentially is a systematic review of systematic reviews. All right, I repeat again, meta-systematic review is a systematic review of systematic reviews. So sometimes people may wonder, why are you doing a review of reviews? All right, you are just spinning the knowledge all over again, around and around and around, right? But there is a logic to this, right? And the logic is this. Is because there are so many different reviews that are being conducted across different fields on the same topic. For example, ESG. ESG has been in environmental discipline, in the environmental studies discipline. It has been reviewed in finance discipline. It has been reviewed in management discipline, and so on. All right. And because there are so many reviews in so many different areas, there is a need to consolidate all these insights. Right? And that's the purpose of the review. The literature reviews are meant to consolidate the insights. And that's why it is sensible to be doing a meta-systematic review on that basis. Right? And this study is very unique because it is not just a systematic review of systematic reviews of ESG, it's also a systematic review of systematic reviews for TQM. Right? And if you look at literature, there are no studies that actually combine these two together. Right? So because of that, we actually do study 1 on ESG, study 2 on TQM, and based on the insights from study 1 on ESG and study 2 on TQM, then we look at what are the different possible pathways to integrate these two streams of research so that it becomes, more impactful at the end of the day. Because if you look at ESG, it's about reporting, right? But if you just report, there is no use, right? Because if you don't improve on it, then it's just, that's where the problem of greenwashing, sustainability washing and stuff like that happens. Right? And that's where TQM comes in, because the focus on TQM is continuous quality improvement, meaning that you must always improve. Right? So if you combine ESG and TQM, like what we have posted in this paper, then you are actually making good progress towards better sustainability and greater sustainability at the end of the day. Because if not, you're just reporting what you have and that's it. Right? There is no spirit that goes in there. Right? So that's the meta-systematic review. So now we know the different types of reviews that can be done. Then you will need to think about your methodology. All right. How do you actually justify your methodology? How do you develop your methodology in a very structured and organized manner? Right. To do that, you have different protocols you can actually adopt. For example, you can do the Prisma protocol. You can use the SPA for SRR protocol. All right. At the end of the day, regardless of which protocol you use, it's more or less the same thing because you are just going to go through the same kind of decisions, review decisions that you'll be making, but putting them into different categories because you're actually following different conventions. One is Prisma, one is SPA for SRR. So Prisma is actually originated from the science discipline, SPA for SRR is for the social science discipline. Is there really much of a difference? Not really much of a difference, all right? Because the same thing that you're going to see, all right? Now, and I'll tell you why, right? So if you look at here, all right, we already done the mapping here in terms of how Prisma and SPA for SRR map. All right. So for Prisma, there are 4 different stages over there. For SPA, for SRR, there are actually 3 different stages. Right. So in Prisma, you have identification, screening, eligibility, inclusion. SPA for SRR, you have assembling, arranging, assessing. Right. So it can actually be mapped in this way. Right. At each of these stages, you'll be looking at different types of considerations. Right. You're looking at what is your search focus, what is your search keywords, how do you create your search string, what are search period you'll be looking at. Which are database you're going to be using? What is your search field? All right, typically search field is just looking at title, abstract, and keywords. Is that enough? You may ask, yes, it's enough, because if that concept is really important, then it should really be stated in either the article, abstract, or keywords. Because if it's not in the article, title, abstract, or keywords, right, the answer there is, the point to note there is the word or, not and, all right? Then if it's not in these 3 different areas, then of course that concept is not the main focus of that article, right? And then you report the search results, right? How many was there? And then based on the search results, you have some filtering stuff, right? You have document type. What type of document do you want? Article, reviews, editorials, notes, and so on. Which one you want? So you choose. All right, based and have justifications for it. Language, typically in English, publication stage. If you really want it to be replicable 100%, then it's about using final articles only, not impress ones. Source type, you have journals, conference proceeding, book chapters, and so on. So which one you want to focus on? There are justifications for it. Subject areas, you're going to choose one. And then based on all those refinements, what is your refined search documents? And then after that, once you have those documents, then you can go and conduct analysis. And again, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, the different types of methods. So you can use a bibliometric analysis, you can use a framework-based analysis for a content analysis, and so on. Right? So now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass the floor back over to Prof. Satish to just give us a quick run through in terms of how this actually looks like in practice, hands-on. Right? So Satish, over to you. What I'll do now is I'll stop sharing my screen so you can actually share yours.
Yes, thank you, Mark. So as we are, we have already.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have already 60 minutes. So we have closer to 15 minutes. Left over for presentation. I'll take 4 or 5 minutes to demonstrate how do you start. And what are the few important things which you need to consider when you're starting a bibliometric analysis or any systematic review for that matter. So let me share my screen and let me open up my page here. Okay, so this is my Scopus page. I hope it is visible to all of us. So this is two databases are very popular for extracting the data or what we call is corpus for bibliometrics analysis specifically. For systematic review or narrative systematic review, or maybe for a manual systematic review, you can use maybe not Scopus or Web of Science, but essentially for conducting bibliometric analysis, you need actually these 2 databases. You need to have access of either of them, or it will be very good if you have access of both of them actually. And I will spell out the reason why we need both of them or either of them. But just let you know, those who are first time seeing this Scopus as one of the database, it is just like aggregator where you have all the articles from different publishers, from business management, starting from Wiley, starting from Elsevier, which is Science Direct, Taylor and Francis, and let's say Springer, and all others, which are major, Emerald, major publishing, also Oxford University Press, Academy of Marketing Association, AMA Publication Group, Sage, which have many of them. So they all are aggregator, and you can find and search the literature at one stop, so this is one stop solution, if I have to say in very rough word, actually, which scholar can use it. So let us say I wanted to search on a particular area. Let us say I'm interested in sustainable finance. So what I will do, this is one popular area of search. So sustainable finance is, let's say, what I'm searching for. Okay. Pardon me for this, let me just refresh it again. Okay, so I'm back here on my search. Where do you search? Search always in the abstract title, article title, abstract, and the keyword. These are the major field where you always start searching. And let us say I'm searching something on sustainable finance. Let us say this is my area. I want to start my research in this particular area. So I'm looking for a corpus that how much research is already being done on this particular area. As Mark when he started the discussion, it is very important to check before you proceed for another review or you undertake any conceptual or empirical research. You need to know what is the past of a particular topic. And the past of a particular topic you can get to know, past and present you can get to know through, by analyzing the literature, or what we call is review of literature. So let us say I start this term and let's say I search on this, and I got 534 hits over here actually. I have document, but what you need to consider, sustainable finance is not only one term. I know there are many other related terms to sustainable finance. So one advice, when you're starting your search process on any topic of your choice, it could be consumer engagement, customer engagement, or maybe anything else, whatever is your area of interest, make sure you have a complete dictionary of keywords, searchable keywords, which you are having, for more detailed discussion on, that searchable, how to develop a searchable keywords, dictionary of keywords, what you can do is you can refer back to me, write to me. I can share another, material which I have prepared for some workshop, which you can always refer back to me, and I will happy to share that with you. So let us say with my experience of reading few papers from here, what I get to know, sustainable finance is not only sustainable finance. There is another related term which is called green finance. Sustainable finance has another term which is called, let's say, green finance. And then there could be like green finance, green financing. Okay, so how do I take into consideration that? So as you might have noticed, let me zoom my screen here. You might have seen that I have put this is in double quotes. Okay, the reason for putting double quotes is because I need sustainable finance word together in one search only. If I don't put, these, this parenthesis or what saying, in close brackets, what will happen? It will search sustainable differently, finance as separately. So if you want to try, you can give a quick try, and you will see that almost the number of document, which is currently 534, will be more than, I think, double of it actually. Okay, so let us say I want to get sustainable financing also. There are certain search key rule which you need to remember. Like I have a very quick rule which I can tell you. You just put a star here or a streak over here. Now, what is the meaning of asterisk? Putting an asterisk, it will search finance, it will search financing, everything coming after finance will be covered here. It could be finance or it could be financing. Similarly, I will put, let's say, asterisk over here. And then I started discussing this idea of, this particular area, and let's say, discussed it with Mark, and Mark said, hey, Satish, there is another term, socially responsible investment. Socially responsible investment. So this, you might have observed, I'm putting something called OR as an operator. Okay, these are called Boolean operator. Okay. So they are used for searching when you are using more than one search term. So socially responsible investment is my another keyword which I'm using. So let us say these three are my search keyword, and assumingly these are all possible keywords on this particular topic, I will just hit my search, and you will see now that number of document which were 534 has now gone to 2196. What I wanted to make a point over here is that whenever we start searching literature or corpus on a particular area, I need to first go through few papers on that particular topic, maybe from Google Scholar to start with, and create something called keyword dictionary. Once you have that keyword dictionary with you, then you can use the Scopus or Web of Science as database. Now, few filter you need to remember when you put here. Very good thing which Scopus helps us is that it first gives you classification of corpus according to subject wise. When Mark was explaining you the process, so this is the process which you do, and that's why we call something called systematic literature review process. Bibliometric is also falls into same clause, but it is quantitative way of doing it, and other type is qualitative way of doing it. So you can just pick up, let us say I'm a scholar from finance area, so I say I'm only interested sustainable finance or green finance or socially responsible investment only from the area of, let's say, economics, business, and business management. So I will take these two area only, and I will put a limiter function here. Okay. Then another good thing which Scopus gives me, that what I can do is that I can put a filter here only for type of document which I'm searching. As you can see here, there are plenty of types of documents are here. Article is there, book chapter is there, review is there, conference paper is there. So the two protocols, SPAR for SLR and Prisma, which are two popular protocol which people use for writing or gathering the information for literature, conducting systematic literature review. You need to clearly mention what you are including. Are you including all type of documents, or are you only focusing on article and review, and why? You need to attach a reason with that. Okay, it is a very standard or normative practice while you publish your SLR in a top tier journal, that you need to distinguish between peer-reviewed documents and non-peer reviewed documents. For example, book chapter is questionable. You don't know whether a book chapter is peer-reviewed or not. Most of the time, they are not peer-reviewed, with not that seriousness as an article has gone through. So in that case, you need to be very careful, which is called something called inclusion and exclusion criteria in SLR process. So whatever is your inclusion and exclusion criteria, you can choose up. Let us say you decided to stick only to article and review, you can just hit something again, what is called limiter function here, and it will further reduce the result to some level. Good thing about these databases is that whatever operation you are doing here, it is all getting recorded in this search string, which you can easily copy and paste in your Word document, which will help you when you will be writing your literature review paper, or maybe as a part of your doctoral thesis program, or maybe as a part of your doctoral proposal program. You can say that these were the keywords, these were my exclusion criteria, these were my inclusion criteria. Another inclusion or exclusion criteria which popularly people keep it is that type of language which you choose for document. As you can see, there are plenty of type of documents which are there in non-English. It is a standard practice again that you select English only, unless and until you have a very specific region. As Mark was mentioning, let us say I'm only looking at the literature from Nordic country only. So in that case, I will even take the papers which are published other than English, or maybe local languages. So you again can put a filter over here. So another last piece of advice when you search on databases like Scopus is that when, let us say, I'm a very new scholar in this area, and by reading 4 or 5 papers, I understand that these are the 3 terms. But Scopus database can even help even refine your search by adding more keywords. If you go down here, you have something called keywords from paper. You see here, you have socially responsible investment, sustainable finance, sustainable development, socially. Now you see here, new keyword has been discovered, ESG. Okay, so I can go back to my edit search again, wherever I was doing, and I can add, ESG as one of the parameter. Let us say over here, let's say I add here quickly, let's say ESG. Okay, and I have to now very careful that ESG is also, I have to abbreviate this: environmental, socially, and let's say governance also. So you have to take both combination into consideration. For the time paucity, I'm only considering, let's say, ESG, and I again go back to my search, I have to put here or operator because otherwise it will give me an error here. So I go search and you will see my result will further increase. As you see here, results have now gone up to 2180. Now, this is your first corpus, first piece of corpus when you are extracting. Please make sure when you are extracting your corpus from any of the databases, you make your notes very clearly. What you have searched, what was the date of your search, what was the database, what was your keywords, okay, what was your limited function, what was your inclusion criteria. All that you have to write in methodology section of your LR paper or the proposal for your doctoral thesis program, whichever you are making of. So depending upon the objective of doing this literature review, you need to report, as SLR has very important characteristics, that it should be reproducible, which means anybody searching later on, let's say Mark is reading this paper again, he should get similar result, not same, which I am now quoting in my paper as a part of my process. Now, last thing before I go back to Mark again is that you can download all these information which I just extracted. Let us say you just click all button here. Here, you select all and you can export in CSV. Just say select all and make sure that you check box all the boxes over here. By default, all these last three boxes are unchecked. In my case, it was all checked because this is the system where I do everyday search on Scopus. So the system has understood my settings. Okay, so I have to make sure that I checkbox everything and I export this. Now, there is a one last thing, which you will encounter if your corpus size is more than 2000. It is giving me a warning that you can only download 2000 document. Okay, I can either do this, or let's say I want all 2180 document. In that case, you need to go back to your search process. What you need to do is you need to manually select first 2000 document, and then you have to download it in 2 steps rather than in 1 step. If you are doing the same exercise on Web of Science, which is again a competing database, over there the limit is 500. Though they say that we have increased the limit to 1000, but when it comes to downloading the complete record, mind it, the limit is still 500. Let us say over there you have to hit 4 times. Over here you have to hit actually 2 times. You can download this information, read this, see that whether all result which you got is relevant for you before you process it for further analysis. Okay, so I'll stop here and go back again to Mark, who will further conclude the discussion which we are carrying on.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Prof. Satish, and that's the hands-on, and that's the beauty of technology, right? You don't only have a software that helps you to analyze this within a few clicks of a button. You also have a software. I mean, you also have a database that actually gives you the data within a few clicks of a button as well, right? So technology is beautiful, but nevertheless, the human intervention is still necessary, and because the software won't tell you the themes. They will just tell you what are the topics based on the things that are there, and it's up to us as humans to give meaning to it, right? So that's in terms of how you go about doing a systematic literature review. That's the methods and the procedures that goes on in that. All right. And to quickly wrap this up, these are some of the innovations in systematic literature reviews. I'll just take another 3 minutes or so, right? So some innovations there, right? What are the innovations that are happening in literature reviews? The first one is a combining of different analytical techniques in a single review, right? So if you're doing a bibliometric review, you can combine bibliographic coupling with keyword characters analysis, and that gives you a triangulation. Alternatively, for framework, you can also use not just one framework, but multiple frameworks, right? So for example, the integration of ADO and TCM frameworks. So that's the first one. Second one is that you actually look at different methods to review in a single literature review, right? So instead of looking at 2 different types of bibliometric review methods, you actually combine a bibliometric method versus a content analysis using frameworks, right? So there's 2 different methods over there. The third one is to look at a multi-study review of different fields, like the ESG and TQM one, right? So typically empirical papers, we have study 1, study 2. Now even in literature reviews, we have study 1, study 2, because there is some value to it. The fourth one is that, yes, you do a multi-study review, but you do one study that actually looks at literature, which is theory, and another one you look at non-literature, for example, practice articles. right? So that's another way to do it. And you can actually triangulate to see whether, the literature and the practice, are they aligned in terms of the challenges and opportunities that each of them see, and what are the gaps if they are not aligned. The fifth one is to actually look at an impact analysis in literature review itself. What is actually contributing to the citations and the impact of that field, all right? Are the authors are the one, where the authors are coming from, does that matter? If it's the US, does it matter? If it's the UK, does it matter? If it's from a Times Higher Education, top 100 universities, does it matter? And stuff like that, right? You can actually do all those kind of analysis over there using what we call as a negative binomial regression. And of course, the sixth one is that you can also leverage on the computer-assisted qualitative data analysis software, for example, Atlas, Leximancer, NVivo, and Crocos, to actually analyze certain things like future research directions to have some kind of commonality. Because sometimes people may ask you that, hey, you're coming out with this future research agenda, what's your basis of support for this, right? So you can actually say that, recent articles across the trends, this is what you find, right? So that's something that you can actually do. So those are innovations in literature reviews. And the last one here is to actually look at rigor. How do you actually ensure rigor? We have what we call as the 2 T's. The first one is triangulation. So how do you do triangulation? You can do it in multiple ways. The first one is what we call as between methods, right? Meaning look at using different methods, right? We have bibliometric analysis, you have content analysis, 2 different methods. Or you can look at within method. So within the bibliometric analysis itself, you have different types of bibliometric analytical techniques. You have bibliographic coupling, you have keyword correctness analysis. From a data based point of view, I saw one question over there. Can you use and combine the results from multiple databases, for example, Scopus and Web of Science? The answer is yes. How do you then delete the duplicates? Very simple. Just Google up Excel, how to identify duplicates in Excel. Then you can actually do that, right? So very, very simple. Can you use multiple sources? Yes, you can also use, for example, conferences versus journals, or those top tier journals versus lower tier journals. And then you can actually see whether what are the similarities in that, to what extent they are similar in terms of themes and major themes, and to what extent they are different, right? So you can also say that, up to 70% or 80% is similar, but 20% is different. That's fine as well, because then you actually have some sort of triangulation, at least 80% of triangulation, and that's perfectly okay. Right, they can explain what are differences at the end of the day, right? So that's number one, the first T, triangulation. Second one is trustworthiness. And trustworthiness, this is what we have in qualitative research. So how do you establish credibility, dependability, confirmability, trustability, and so on, right? So if credibility, you use an established review method or protocol. Dependability, you can actually look at, disclosing your review decisions plus justifications. Confirmability, you actually have cross-check of sources, you have intercoded reliability that's going on. Transferability is, you can actually do some post-hoc analysis, or you can actually compare your results versus other types of reviews in other similar areas, right? For example, if you're looking at sustainable consumption, what are some of the major themes in, let's say, green consumption, in social responsible consumption? What are the similarities and what are the differences? Is it transferable in terms of insights, and what are the limitations are there, right? So these are 2 different ways to actually ensure rigor in systematic literature reviews, right? And I think that's all from us. And I think let's get right into some of the Q&As. So yeah.
Wow, that was phenomenal. Thank you both so much. And looking at the chat, I'm just going to sort of pull out some of the themes of questions, because most of the things that people brought up, you addressed as you went. So I think a lot of my questions are going to be just sort of hitting the highlights of what you've already said. The first is there were several comments about how to make the case that this particular topic is needed and making a contribution to the literature, given some journals may be more or they may be less open to this type of research.
Yeah, maybe I'll take that one in terms of contribution, because I think that's where I usually contribute towards in the papers that Satish and myself write. So I think going back to the earlier part of the presentation, when we look at what is necessity, what is not, is the research necessary, is it important, is it relevant, is it urgent? Look at those kind of criteria. There's 4 criteria, and look at it from 2 perspectives. First is the perspective of the topic itself, the domain itself. All right. And the second one is from a review perspective. All right. For example, there are no reviews in the area. So definitely, right. And then we actually show that a lot of research has been done in the area. And if there's no review that's been done in the area and research is actually proliferating, what happens is that people may be senseless, right? They don't know where to go. They don't know what has already been there, and they might not have a full complete picture. So that's why the review is actually very, very important in that sense. All right. And yeah, I think to put it simply is to look at those criteria for motivating a research. It's not just reviews, it's also other types of research as well. But for review, there's a benefit because you actually can look at necessity, importance, relevance, urgency from two perspectives. One is from the topic itself, and one is from a review perspective itself. So yeah.
Thank you. The next sort of set of questions we're dealing with resources in terms of best and free search engines for databases for the SLR and the software, best free software to utilize for the analysis.
So this one I would like to take, with Mark, so the free softwares, free databases, as we can see, are only, Google Scholar in terms of availability. But if you are conducting bibliometric analysis, it won't help you. And even if you are conducting a qualitative systematic review, even there, a Google Scholar will not help you much. The reason is very clear. Google Scholar do not control for quality of documents. Okay, it doesn't distinguish between a published paper and an unpublished paper. Anything which got a DOI just appear in Google Scholar. So my piece of advice is that since you are doing literature review for a specific purpose, so your database can't be generic. It should be specific only. So Scopus, Web of Science, EBSCO, ProQuest, these are the major ones which are there. But of lately, if you analyze the trend of people using databases, Scopus and Web of Science are the one which are being used by, scholars. I can understand scholars coming from developing market, they may not have access to these databases, but, try to collaborate with the scholar, those who have it, and there is a solution for it actually. So that's the easiest answer I can give you. And, let us say I have access of both the database. Anybody wants some corpus from, on a particular topic, I'm happy to help them, from any perspective, because sharing only create more knowledge actually. That's the basic agenda where we are actually. Second part of the question was related to database for, software for analyzing. I think we have already answered this part of the question. As we said, for bibliometric, if you're doing it, WOS Viewer or Bibliometrics R package, which is free, can help you in that case. Gephi is even free over there. Like for doing qualitative systematic review, there is per se no software is there, but except for where Professor Mark was mentioning, you have NVivo, but they are not free, of course, you need to pay, and they are not like, very expensive one actually. If you are a student, in fact, they are heavily discounted if you are a student, you need to pay only as high as $20 actually. Which is very, very, less money in terms of investment. And since I'm a finance, scholar, so I call them as an investment rather than an expense actually. So I put them in a category of investment actually. So that's how I would like to answer that question.
Thank you so much. We have a couple articles that are a couple questions about sort of very specific areas. And I'm going to sort of give them to you all at once because we're running out of time. The idea of calculating the centrality of keywords, dealing with diverse themes, and what's your pro forma within your Excel spreadsheet. So there's some questions dealing with sort of the mechanics.
Yeah, so the the idea is that these are very much directed and specific question. So those who have asked these questions, for the benefit of all, because the webinar is on, innovative way of doing literature review, types of LR we are talking. So those who have specific issues, let's say on, understanding clusters, how to come up with cluster, please drop an email to me or a copy to Mark also. I'll be happy to answer, help them in person rather than taking, taxing on others times, those who are attending this webinar.
And then I think the last question was the idea of, with this different software, are there issues that you'll get to different results based on which software you use?
Yes, of course, because different software got different algorithm and different mechanics there. So don't worry much about it. Whatever you're choosing, choose one actually. Okay, so let us say if you have used, WOS viewer, you have already mentioned in your methodology that my whole analysis is based on, this. So don't worry about that if you are getting varied result from two different, databases, because it is very obvious that calculation mechanism can be different. No worry about it. No one reviewer or, editor or even the authors are not concerned about mechanics part of it. How do you write the story? That is most important part of it, actually. Let me be very, very honest with you. Working over 100 such pieces, nobody bother about what was the mechanism you use. How do you triangulated them? And if you have seen some of the paper which Mark has already mentioned, we have used in some papers where we have triangulated, in fact, from two different methods, the themes actually using one method, let's say covert key occurrence and, co-authorship analysis. So we have made, those type of, efforts also. That's how we are progressing in that field. But even after that, you have some specific issues, again, my advice will be drop an email to me or Mark. I think Mark want to add something on that.
Yeah, so I'll give you a very simple example, right? If let's say you run a regression analysis or you run structural regression modeling across different software, you will also get different results, right? The results will the direction of the effect and the significance of effect will be the same, right? But the exact statistic itself may differ, by a few points here and there, right? So that is pretty normal because different software uses slightly different algorithms, right? As long as you say which software you use, then people can actually refer back to the manual of the software, that version of the software, to know what algorithm is actually being embedded over there. So that's what's important. But I think what Satish actually mentioned is actually very, very true, which is regardless of which software that you use, as long as you use the same kind of analytical technique, it will also bring you to the same results at the end of the day. So same case, if you run, structural regression modeling, right? Now you run in AMOS, right? It's CBSEM. And now with Smart PLS, they also can run CBSEM. You will definitely get the same result for CBSEM, regardless of whether it's AMOS or whether it's Smart PLS, right? And even you use different methods. For example, you use CBSEM versus PLS SEM, your relationship will not change. If it's significant, it's significant. If it's positive, it's positive, right? So that's the whole idea. And that's the same thing with bibliometric as well. Yeah, so that's just some comparison with the mainstream kind of research that people usually like to talk about. Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you both so much for coming. This was phenomenal. For our guests, there's been requests for your PowerPoints. If you wouldn't mind sending me that, I'll ask the AMA Higher Ed group if we can post that on the website. We'll also post this video on the AMA Higher Ed website. So if you don't follow them on LinkedIn, they're on LinkedIn. I'll also share it on my LinkedIn. And then for our guest, we started this at the beginning. Before you log off, I'd love to know where everybody was coming from. And we're going to do another AMA Higher Ed SIG research seminar in the spring. If there's topics that you're like, gee, for the next one, cover this topic, please feel free to share that in the chat. And to our guests, oh my gosh, I wish we could hear everybody clapping. This was phenomenal. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And I know we've all got probably 100 ideas. I want to do this. I want to do this. Just from hearing you. Thank you again. And for our visitors, thank you so much for attending. We greatly appreciate it.
right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Just
Thank
drop us a
you.
line.
Good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
See ya.
Good
Good night,
day,
good
depending
morning,
upon
good
wherever you are.
afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.